Wishing to earn $10 or $12 by some honest and agreeable method, in order to meet my unusual expenses, I planted about 2 acres and a half of light and sandy soil, chiefly with beans. In the course of the summer, it appeared by the arrowheads which I turned up in hoeing, that an extinct nation had anciently dwelt here. What shall I learn of beans or beans of me? I cherish them, I hoe them, early and late I have an eye to them, and this is my day's work. Fellow travelers, as they rattled by, compared it aloud with the fields which they had passed, so that I came to know how I stood in the agricultural world. Mine was, as it were, the connecting link between wild and cultivated fields. As some states are civilized, and others half-civilized, and others savage or barbarous, so my field was, though not in a bad sense, a half-cultivated field. Before yet any woodchuck or squirrel had run across the road, or the sun had got above the shrub oaks, while all the dew was on, I began to level the ranks of haughty weeds in my bean field and throw dust upon their heads. As I drew a still fresher soil about the rows with my hoe, I disturbed the ashes of unchronicled nations who in primeval years lived under these heavens, and their small implements of war and hunting were brought to the light of this modern day. Near at hand, upon the topmost spray of a birch, sings the brown thrasher, or red mavis, as some love to call him, all the morning, glad of your society, that would find out another farmer's field if yours were not here. While you are planting the seed, he cries, drop it, cover it up, pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. Daily the beans saw me come to their rescue armed with a hoe and thin the ranks of their enemies, filling up the trenches with weedy dead. Every man looks at his woodpile with a kind of affection. I love to have mine before my window, and the more chips, the better to remind me of my pleasing work. The grand necessity, then, for our bodies is to keep warm, to keep the vital heat in us. Huh.
Be ready, friend Henry. Tomorrow I will require your assistance with an errand of utmost consequence. Look for my instructions here at your cabin tomorrow morning, and be ready to put your expert knowledge of our woods to work for the cause of freedom. I hope you will not fail me. Most sincerely, A. Bronson Alcott.
Huh. All sound heard at the greatest possible distance produces one and the same effect, the vibration of the universal lyre, just as the intervening atmosphere makes a distant ridge of the earth interesting to our eyes by the azure tint it imparts to it. Interesting.
Ah, there you are, Henry. This new poem of yours is exceptional. I think it may be the purest strain and the loftiest that has yet peeled from this unpoetic American forest. Tell me, what are you working on next? And have you thought much of publishing your work so that it might reach beyond our small hamlet?
Men have become the tools of their tools. The man who independently plucked the fruits when he was hungry has become a farmer, and he who stood under a tree for shelter, a housekeeper. We now no longer camp as for a night, but have settled down on earth and forgotten heaven.
My dear Miss Fuller, it is good to hear from you that work on the next issue of The Dial proceeds. I'm sending you a new piece that my young friend Thoreau has written for our journal. Talk with him but a few hours and you will find him a remarkable person, I am certain. He is a treasured companion, and I have had the most memorable conversations with him about nature and all else. We're all well, and young Waldo sends you his love. R.W. Emerson. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ah, you found my home. Good for you, Henry. I wanted to look at that passage about the generations of mankind and how they're like the autumn leaves.
Yes, I've read it.
Well, that's good. I'd hoped you would, and that it would give you inspiration. Your experiment reminds me of the image of heroic life that Homer gives us. I wonder, can we all make our lives heroic in our quality of living, if not on the field of battle? Since you're here, I've also been looking all over for my works of Confucius. I was reading it the other day down by the marsh. Have you seen it there, by any chance?
I haven't seen it, but I can look for it.
Wonderful. Let me mark the very spot. I think I left it on your map so that you can find it.
That shouldn't be difficult to find. I'll see you again soon. Every day or two, I stroll to the village to hear some of the gossip which is incessantly going on there, circulating either from mouth to mouth or from newspaper to newspaper, and which, taken in homeopathic doses, was really as refreshing in its way as the rustle of leaves and the peeping of frogs. One afternoon, near the end of the first summer, when I went to the village to get a shoe from the cobbler's, I was seized and put into jail because, as I have elsewhere related, I did not pay a tax to, or recognize the authority of, the state which buys and sells men, women, and children like cattle at the door of its Senate house. I had gone down to the woods for other purposes, but wherever a man goes, men will pursue and paw him with their dirty institutions and, if they can, constrain him to belong to their desperate odd-fellow society. Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison. I have paid no poll tax for 6 years. I was put into a jail once on this account for one night, and as I stood considering the walls of solid stone, 2 or 3 feet thick, the door of wood and iron, a foot thick, and the iron grating which strained the light, I could not help being struck with the foolishness of that institution which treated me as if I were mere flesh and blood and bones to be locked up. I did not for a moment feel confined, and the wall seemed a great waste of stone and mortar. As I walked in the woods to see the birds and squirrels, so I walked to the village to see the men and boys. Instead of the wind among the pines, I heard the carts rattle. In one direction from my house, there was a colony of muskrats in the river meadows. Under the grove of elms and buttonwoods in the other horizon was a village of busy men, as curious to me as if they had been prairie dogs.
Henry and John have decided to start their own school, Father. It means they won't be able to help much in the pencil factory, but they already have several students promised to attend, and it will be a fine, uncommon school, won't it, Henry?
July 1838. Dear Messieurs Thoreau, my sister, whom you know, has sent me a copy of the Yeoman's Gazette with your advertisement for a new Concord Academy, and suggested I contact you regarding the education of my son, Edmund Sewell. Edmund is a bright pupil, and is in need of instruction preparatory to a collegiate course, with the usual English branches of study. I will send him, with my daughter Ellen as chaperone, to meet you at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Reverend Edmund Quincy Sewell.
Dear Ellen, Sophia tells me you enjoyed the poems I sent, so here are some more brief lines for you with my best wishes. Nature never makes haste. Her systems revolve at an even pace. The bud swells imperceptibly, without hurry or confusion, as though the short spring days were an eternity. Why then should man hasten, as if anything less than an eternity were allotted for the last deed? As the wise man is not anxious that time wait for him, neither does he wait for it. Henry Thoreau.
August 1838. Dear Sophia, it was so kind of your family to welcome us, and I hope we will see you all again soon. Edmund looks forward to starting his studies with your brothers, and I'm sure we will all see much more of each other. The poems Henry sent came safely and pleased us much. The sonnet entitled Beauty is my favorite. Best regards, Ellen Sewell.
Interesting.
Dear Henry, I have set a little game for you based on our own favorite board, the woods. Here is the first piece of the puzzle. I rise above the forest floor, where once I lay in days of yore. A gentle hand has made formation in places hidden, though not forbidden. Come find me if you seek inspiration. Bonne chance, Sophia.
Society is commonly too cheap. We meet at the post office and at the sociable, and about the fireside every night. We live thick and are in each other's way, and stumble over one another, and I think that we thus lose some respect for one another. Interesting.
Good afternoon, Henry.
Hello. The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run. Most of the luxuries and many of the so-called comforts of life are not only not indispensable, but positive hindrances to the elevation of mankind.
What can I do for you?
For my part, I could easily do without the post office. I think that there are very few important communications made through it. For a long time, I was a reporter to a journal, of no very wide circulation, whose editor has never yet seen fit to print the bulk of my contributions, and, as is too common for writers, I got only my labor for my pains.
My dear Thoreau, believe me when I say that I have tried to do you the favor of getting your article into the hands of publishers, but I have not had success in this errand, and have hardly a hope that it will be immediate, if ever. I know you have written a good thing, too good, I fear, to be profitable to yourself or attractive to publishers. I will remain your champion in these matters, however, and entreat you to send me that one piece you were working on when we met at your family home. Remember me to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Yours heartily, Horace Greeley.
Dear Mr. Thoreau, Dr. Agassiz was quite satisfied with the specimens you sent last month. He says to tell you that the small mud turtle was actually a very rare species, quite distinct from the snapping turtle as you labeled it. We would be very much obliged if you could supply us with samples of the following fishes from your small pond and can pay 75 cents apiece. 5 common shiners, 3 yellow perch, 1 walleye. Sincerely, James Elliott Cabot, Assistant to Dr. Agassiz, Harvard University.
Hello then, Henry. Here for your mail or just snooping for news? I hear there will be a rally soon about these slavery questions. That abolitionist from Boston, Mr. Garrison, will be speaking, but I don't know much about such things.
I observed that the vitals of the village were the grocery, the barroom, the post office, and the bank, and, as a necessary part of the machinery, they kept a bell, a big gun, and a fire engine at convenient places, and the houses were so arranged so that every traveler had to run the gauntlet, and every man, woman, and child might get a lick at him. Summer is gone now, with all its infinite wealth, and still nature is genial to me. Though I no longer pluck so many berries on the hill, still I behold the same inaccessible beauty around me. No man ever stood the lower in my estimation for having a patch in his clothes. Yet I am sure that there is greater anxiety commonly to have fashionable, or at least clean and unpatched clothes than to have a sound conscience. We know but few men, a great many coats and breeches. Before we can adorn our houses with beautiful objects, the walls must be stripped, and our lives must be stripped, and beautiful housekeeping and beautiful living be laid for a foundation. A taste for the beautiful is most cultivated out of doors, where there is no house and no housekeeper.
Ah, Henry, it is so seldom I am disappointed by you. I know you must have had good reason not to deliver the items as I asked. The man John, for whom I requested your aid, did sit at our table, and was an impressive lesson to my children, bringing before them the wrongs done to the black man by the peculiar institution of the South. I hope that I can count on you more reliably in the future. Your friend, A. Bronson Alcott.
October, 1845. Dearest Henry, Mother asks how you are doing with your work out there in the woods. Won't you come home sometime? I have been sorting through some old letters that you might like to see, and have left them out for you. Sophia.
Dear Henry, it seems like Concord is growing so rapidly these days. I see in the post office that there is much surveying work to be had for someone like yourself, who knows the land and loves to walk its every vista. Of course, surveying does aid in the parceling up of your beloved woods, and yet it is a living that could keep you while you write and live close to nature. A difficult choice, certainly. Yours sincerely, R.W.E.
Sometimes the man in the bean field heard more of travelers' gossip and comment than was meant for his ear. Beans so late, peas so late, for I continued to plant when others had begun to hoe. Does he live there? Asks the black bonnet of the gray coat. And the hard-featured farmer reins up his grateful Dobbin to inquire what you are doing. It was a singular experience, that long acquaintance which I cultivated with beans. What with planting and hoeing and harvesting and threshing and picking over and selling them. The last was the hardest of all, I might add, eating, for I did taste. I was determined to know beans. I went so far as to slaughter a woodchuck which ravaged my bean field, effect his transmigration, as a Tartar would say, and devour him, partly for experiment's sake. Look out for woodchucks, if it is an exposed place, for they will nibble off the earliest tender leaves almost clean as they go. And again, when the young tendrils make their appearance, they have notice of it, and will shear them off with both buds and young pods, sitting erect like a squirrel. From under a rotten stump, my hoe turned up a sluggish, portentous, and outlandish spotted salamander, a trace of Egypt and the Nile, yet our contemporary. This is the result of my experience in raising beans. Plant the common small white bush bean about the 1st of June in rows 3 feet by 18 inches apart, being careful to select fresh, round, and unmixed seed. Harvest as early as possible if you would escape frosts and have a fair and saleable crop. I am no more lonely than the loon in the pond that laughs so loud, or than Walden Pond itself. I am no more lonely than a single mullein or dandelion in a pasture, or a bean leaf, or sorrel, or a horsefly, or a bumblebee. I am no more lonely than the millbrook, or a weathercock, or the North Star, or the south wind, or an April shower, or a January thaw, or the first spider in a new house. This further experience also I gained. I said to myself, I will not plant beans and corn with so much industry another summer, but such seeds, if the seed is not lost, as sincerity, truth, simplicity, faith, innocence, and the like, and see if they will not grow in this soil. Our whole life is startlingly moral. There is never an instant's truce between virtue and vice. Goodness is the only investment that never fails.